Hello friends, welcome to my channel SushantChessWise. Today onwards we are going to start with opening series and where we will discuss lines which are very much suitable for 1800 around rated players, and we are going to discuss openings which are like main lines but not very detailed so that it becomes easy to prepare, and at the same time I would like to make the lines bit trappy, very interesting ones that I have also used at some point of time. Some of the openings here in this series my students are currently playing or I have played them extensively for many years. So let's get started with today's opening. We are discussing a line against the Caro Kann defense: e4, c6, d4, d5. Last week I showed you one game. I prefer the line ed, cd, c4. This is so-called the Panobotvinnik attack. After the eventual trade of d pawn for c4, often we have the isolated pawn for white. This is called the IQP or the isolated queen pawn, which often becomes a source of kingside attack. I've got a whole series on IQP positions. You can check the lessons over there. I'll give the link in the description. So the main line for black here is nf6, because as soon as pawn takes pawn, black wants to place his knight in front of the isolated pawn. That is the ideal location for the knight. White goes nc3, puts more pressure on this d5 square, and he wants to see how black reacts now. So black has various setups here. He can wait for some time with nc6, which happens to be the main line. Sometimes players play e6 instantly. There is the move g6, and of course dc is bad. Dc, after d takes bishop c4, there will be d5 soon. So white's position will be much better. In these kind of positions, this bishop cannot move out very freely, because as soon as bg4 or bf5, there is the move qb3, creating double attack on b7 and f7. As often it is the case in the queen's gambit also. The c8 bishop has to remain inside. So let's get going with the lines here. First, let's start with the main move, that is nc6. This is the main line. White goes nf3 and black plays bishop g4. The line e6 we will be discussing soon. e6, c5, ne4. This will transpose to the other line where generally black has started with the move 5 e6 instead of nc6. So bg4, and then comes c takes d5, knight takes d5, queen b3. Instantly putting a very important question to this knight, whether black wants to play e6 but see b7 hangs in most cases, or whether he want to play nb6 by first capturing on the square f3. So this is the point. So the main move here is of course bishop f3 to knight c3 bc. White's d4 pawn gets well protected, and after c, bishop f3, g takes f3, b7 is under fire. So this position is already good for white. The endgame with qb6 only invites trouble after the very strong d5. The knight has to retreat. See, after qb3, ab, knight b8 almost forced, and see bishop e3, a6, bg2. And whites, you can see bishops are very strong. Soon there will be f4 followed by d6 at some point. See, this bishop will be very effective on this diagonal. Position is somewhat better for white. Definitely he has lot more development. We can say at least clearly better for white. Of course, no one takes on c3. So after bf3, gf3, there are mainly ideas based on knight b6 or e6. After the move knight b6, there comes bishop e3, e6, castle. The play is going to become very sharp. I try to keep the lines as imbalanced as possible. Now see bishop e7 and d5. Very important move. ed, knight d, rook d5, qc7, threatening this c, discovered check with knight b4. So king just moves away, and here after castle, white has many ways to play. See, one very simple line suggested by computers usually is the move h4 here. Just play h4, remove this pawn from here, go rook g1, bh6, rook h5, or bd3 like in the other analysis. or we can pressurize the black player here with the move bd3, where the game becomes very sharp and forceful. The point is that after knight b4, there is the strong bishop h7, king h7, rook check, kg8, rook g1. This position is very tricky, looks as though very easily piece up, right? But there are two threats. First threat is C, bd4, and the second is bishop h6. Let's say any move like rook d8. Okay, rook f d8 is the only move in this position. And here comes C, bh6, bishop f6, then queen into b4. You saw that the b4 knight is taken and there is dangerous threat on the g7 square, bg7 followed by rook g5. So this should be really winning for white. After rook f d8, there are two, bishop h6 and bf8, then bg7, bg7, rook g5. Here too, black's task is by no means very easy. If you use computer program, you will realize that knight d3 is the only move which can get him any closer to a draw. There too, play is not at all easy for black. You can imagine how difficult it is after rook takes this g7. Let me show you some ideas. If knight c6, then rg7, king f8, queen a3 check, and it's the game over. Next move is going to be rook g8 after say ke8, rook e1, kd7, rook f7, and white wins. And after the only move nd3 here, you can make out that rook g7 check, king f8. This position is not at all easy. There can be the move rook g8 over here. So this position is definitely very difficult for black. You can analyze this further and you will realize that black's task which is much more difficult. And if you want to keep the play more lively, then you can go to the line h4 which I suggested. So here generally black plays the main move e6, and after e6 queen takes b7, knight takes d4, and bb5 check. The most important line, this is considered to be the main line, knight b5 and qc6 check, forcing the king to move. If queen comes to d7, you can make out that this rook is hanging. Okay, so ke7, queen takes b5, and now see two lines. Easily black can go wrong over here after say knight c3 bc. This bishop on a3 can be annoying in many cases. Generally, black players do the main move qd7 here. After qd7 takes, bishop check, f6, queen d5, ed, be3. Position is roughly level, but I definitely consider there are good chances for white because of this queenside pawn majority. If this endgame is practiced well, then our chances against a very highly rated player is also somewhat better. And against a lower rated player also, this imbalanced pawn structure gives good chances. After ke6, rook c1, bd6, I like this idea, rook c6. We are threatening to use bishop f4 or bc5 at some point. So rook c8, rook a6, rook d8, castle, and see, soon there will be rook e1. So you can see there is some pressure on a7 and rook coming to e1. So see, after king f5, rook d1, and here too we are putting some pressure on black. So I think black's task is not that easy, although position is very slightly better for white theoretically. So with this we have covered the main line. Now the turn to look into the other lines which are very important. Let's see the main move order. e6. This e6 is done whenever after nf3 black players intend to play the move bb4, which I will cover completely as a game study. I have a very interesting game in this line. We will discuss that at the end. Meanwhile, let me show you the other main lines. Like black plays be7 or nc6, they transpose into each other. If nc6, then c5. This idea we are going to use. I personally prefer c takes d5 followed by bd3, which gives the IQP position. This c5 line also has been played by me extensively. Some of my students are using this. Very good score they are getting till 2000, 2100 rating range players. So I like this line. See, now the idea is very simple. Black will be pressurized on this c6 square. Okay, so let's say an e4 should be played by black, an e4, then queen c2. We want to take here with the queen and not the pawn. So after f5, bb5, bd7, castle, the main idea is to use this strong square for our knight, and this e4 knight can be kicked away by f3. That is the major structural difference that we have. After b7, we can do bishop c6, bc, bishop f4. Black should generally play bishop c6. If he takes with the bishop here, then white's plan of going b4, a4, b5 becomes very easy, and he gets a queenside majority passed pawn on the c file usually. So that makes the task very easy. And the main position, you saw this one, this knight is now soon going to settle on e5, rook e1, and the same plan going b4, a4, b5, and then using this c pawn. This is white's main idea. So be7 is played, to be7 also, c5, castle, and b6, two options. Generally b6 here is very premature. There comes b4, a5. Black tries to undermine the pawn, but knight a4, good move. Now the point is that a takes b, knight b6 is very strong for white. So nd7, and now comes bb5, good move. The threat is now c6, you can see, followed by c7 check. So castle and then bishop f4. Once again the threat is c6 followed by c7. So this position is clearly better for white. So the best move happens to be castle bd3, and now to play the move b6. But now there is no problem. White just plays b4, a5, na4, nd7, and here there are two lines I can recommend. One is the very sharp move h4 here, and other is the very interesting move b5. Both have very similar ideas. With h4 here, we want to use, after AB, knight into b6, knight b6, bishop h7 check. We deflected this knight on d7 from the f6 square, and now see this Greek gift sacrifice wins after knight g5, bg5, hg5, king g8, queen h5, f5, or f6 to both g6, and next move you can see force mate on h8. So after rook e8, see queen h8 mates. Those who don't have idea about this Greek gift sacrifice with knight g5, I have got lessons based on that, so you can refer them also. In this position, after particular one, kg6, white wins very easily. After h5 check, you can see king f5, e4. More logically, see on the spot queen f3 leading to mate, because f6 square is now guarded. There are other ways to win as well. And apart from h4, we can also use the move b5. Very interesting. Similar idea now. After bc, knight dc, knight c5. Then also see takes, bh7, kh7, knight g5 check. This time it's not a forced mate. kg6, queen check, 5, queen c5. White is clearly better. Same h4, h5 idea can be used. Black can try the move e5 here instead of c5, but here to see c6, e4, cd, nd7, and after castle ef, queen f3, white has all the advantage. See here this b pawn is already, see, very dangerous, and see rooks can be useful, e1, b1, bishop going to f4. Basically this b pawn is a big trouble for black, so clearly better for black. So we now have two different setups totally for black. We are going to look at the move bb4, which is so-called the Pano Nimzo, and we will have the totally different g6 setup. Let's quickly go to the move bb4 here. With bb4, see, black plays like the Nimzo Indian defense. Knight is on f6, bishop comes to b4, hence it is called the Pano Nimzo. We will play the move c takes d5, knight takes d5, and here there is bd2 also and qc2. We are going to choose this line, which was chosen by Tal also, and this game we are taking from Magnus Carlsen's game when he was 2560 rating and played in the year 2005. Very interesting analysis follows. Black goes nc6, puts pressure on d4, white plays bd3. See, main idea is to force black to play h6 before castle. But white offers this pawn on d4. See how? Knight takes c3, b takes c3, knight takes d4. Now qa4 check is of no use, because even after nc6 you will see that queen attacks this d3 bishop. So white goes just nd4, qd4, and now comes the bb5 check. Very important move. Now black's castle is broken, because if he insists on playing bd7, then takes whatever takes now. If king takes, then queen a4 check, king moves, qb4 wins. And if queen takes, then just c takes b4 and white is a piece up. So king f8 forced, and now c3 pawn is c weak, and white has to give up the exchange. So c takes b4, queen e5 check first, forcing queen e2, queen a1, castle. So now the first threat is to play bishop b2. If queen takes a2, then see bg7 check, and this queen on a2 is just taken. So the queen runs away. Then comes bb2, queen e7, rook d1, good move, stopping bd7 of course. And after f6 here, Magnus missed the very strong move bd4. I think what he missed here was this very tricky line. See, after the move qb4, qh5, g6, the difficult move to find is queen h4. This is the stunning move. Not even this, when I was calculating, I had missed the idea g5 when queen h6 and f6 hangs. And here see, f6 is weak, h6 is weak. Okay, this bishop is about to release this rook on d1. So this position is really winning. Now nothing is there. If g5, then queen h6 check, king f7, queen f6, kg8, qg7 mates. And if e5, then also see, queen takes f6 check, kg8, be5. On the spot, game over. Rook d8 and queen g7 and h8. Everything is threat. So black has to play the move after bd4, b6. But after b6 comes bishop e5. Now the threat is bd6, and you will see this rook getting trapped. F takes e, queen check, king g8, queen takes 8, king f7. Another strong move follows after, see, rook c1. This bishop on c8 is indeed in trouble. After qd8, queen a7, kg6, rook c7. Now q d1 is blunder, just bishop f1, g7 would hang. So queen f6, qb6. White has gained all the material. He is a pawn up, and just he is winning. Rook d8, just qc6, rook d1 does nothing, just bishop f1. You see this c8 is getting trapped, and queen e4 check is already a threat. So white is of course winning. So finally, let's finish the line with the variation based on g6 idea. So g6, some lessons back I mentioned the game played by me in this line. We play the move cd5, and after bg7 we want to use bb5 check. We'll come to that. Firstly, if knight takes d5 instantly, then qb3, and now here knight c3 is with check, because bc4, e6, bc, nc6, nf3. Whenever bg7 comes, we will do bishop a3. Stop his castle, and after bf8 castle, white is clearly better. After knight b6 here, white just gets d5 very easily. See, bg7, be3. Can't take bishop c3, because after qc3, h8 hangs. So castle, rook d1 protects d5. Generally, it is said that once the pawn reaches d5, it is better off than on d4. So lastly, black has the move bg7, to which bb5 check, and now bd7 mistake, because just qb3, and white often manages to play ne2, bg5 followed by bf6, and often holds this pawn on d5 permanently. So nd7, and we are using the move d6 here. Very interesting move. E takes d, queen check, queen e7, and now the good move bishop f4. The point is that if d5, then bd6, queen e2, ne2. This is our idea. When after bf8, be5, white is clearly better. So this same position can come here after queen e2 check, knight e2, and d5, bd6, bf8, be5. Now if bg7, then knight d5. Pawn is just taken and the king side is shattered. So in my game, the opponent played here, see, a6, b5. He tried to drive this bishop away. When I placed my bishop here and attacked d5, and you can check that interesting game. And the other line is the move bishop e2 here, which is also considered theoretically very good. After ke7, bf3, nb6, long castle, and ne2 follows. White is slightly better. So I've tried to give ample choices wherever I felt there can be options, but mostly we should try to stick to main ideas, and the lines are main and not very theoretically deep. So that should give us some edge. I hope you will like this lesson. Definitely let me know in the comments below. Thanks.